Andy's coming through. Kia ora, everyone. I'm just going to wait for. Yeah. Great. So the attendees are starting to stream on in. And we can get started. Kia ora tatou, and welcome back to another Q&A event here at Digital Boost. This is our second one for the week. We're really lucky to have Laura Gemmell here from EcoChoice Aotearoa. We're going to talk about keeping your business ahead of the curve in regards to our social impact and environmental impact of our businesses. Laura, I know you have a ton of information for us, so I'm really excited to get this started. And for all of you streaming in right now, please pop your questions into the Q&A, be a part of the conversation with us. Any questions you might have, nothing is too silly. I'm excited to get this going. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very excited to talk about some of this stuff. It's I'm very passionate about it, so thank you. Excellent. Well, kia ora, everyone. As Georgia said, I am Laura Gemmell. I am from EcoChoice Aotearoa. We've been around for about 30 years. You may have heard of us previously. We've had a little bit of a rebrand. So we used to be known as Environmental Choice New Zealand. So just in the last couple of months, we've rebranded to EcoChoice Aotearoa. And yes, we've been around for 30 years. So we came out of an initiative by the Ministry for the Environment. They own our trademark, but we are independent and very proudly so. We're a not-for-profit, and we like to say that we operate without fear or favour. I guess some really quick things just about us, so you know who we are and what we do is we certify products and services primarily. We definitely have a history sort of in the building sector, but also around cleaning products, textiles, things like that. So there are all sorts of products that we certify. Not all of them would be always considered what you would think was typically eco-friendly, which is a phrase that I'm looking forward to talking about today, but they are necessary. And I guess we exist to put standards in place to minimize the impact that they have. So we kind of refrain from using the word eco-friendly. We use environmentally preferable. And that's why it's a real pain for SEO, I have to say, as we're finding, because we are now rebuilding our website, and our copywriter really wants to use eco-friendly because that's what everyone searches for, of course. Anyway, I guess the easiest way to explain what we do is that we will set standards. We will speak with industry and gather intel. We're part of something called the Global Eco Labeling Network. So we have a lot of other, I suppose, expertise to lean on. And we will create standards. We publish them for 60 days. So anyone can have their say and give us feedback on them. And then they sort of, come into play. We're a voluntary scheme. And businesses can apply if they think that they might pass muster. All of our standards are available on our website. We try to be as transparent as possible. So also from consumers, so they can see exactly the sort of hoops that businesses have to jump through in order to obtain our eco label. And once you've applied, we then will sort of link you up with an independent auditor. So we set the standard, and we think it's really important to have someone who's independent from us go in and I guess look under every nook and cranny and make sure that you do actually comply. And that can happen often in New Zealand, obviously, but lots of businesses have, they source components or the entire product from overseas as well. So we have a network of auditors right around the globe. We're not racking up our carbon footprint by jumping on a plane to go audit certain facilities. There we have people in country already. So I guess those who have been awarded our eco label have really gone above and beyond, and that's kind of what we pride ourselves on. So you'll have legislation, and then we aim to set our standards well above that, and that is quite useful when you're a business, because inevitably we're helping you get ahead of the curve, from inevitable legislation. So we're going to be talking about green claims. today, but also obviously modern slavery. It doesn't just affect the big guys. I think it's really important for SMEs to understand that, right through to ethical procurement and those sorts of things. So that's a little bit about us. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. If you want to dig a bit deeper into our history and how we operate and things like that. But these were a couple of the topics that I thought we could touch on today, and it's totally up to you how much time you'd like to spend on each one. There might be ones that are of more interest to you than others. But I thought a good place to start would be around green claims, because it seems to be on everyone's lips at the moment. And look, in the EU at the moment, they've got legislation which is in the works around green claims. There was some really big issues around greenwashing over there, and they've decided to crack down. This is a bit of a graphic about the different types of greenwashing. And sometimes I think it's really important to remember that, while sometimes it can be a little bit devious, sometimes it's really unintentional as well. And I think, especially in New Zealand, we've got, the Advertising Standards Authority has got some guidelines, so does the Commerce Commission, but we don't actually have legislation at this point. So it can be a little bit difficult for people to really navigate. And I'm sure, lots of people, and honestly, 18 months ago, I thought the term eco-friendly was absolutely fine. There's bits and pieces here that I think this is quite handy. There's lots of different versions of this infographic, but it's quite a good one to refer to. So I guess, the EU might seem quite far away and their legislation might seem irrelevant to us, but actually, if you're a business that has trade aspirations, for instance, you are going to have to make sure you comply with what they're proposing. The other thing is that we know the Ministry for the Environment in New Zealand is very closely watching what is happening in the EU. So it's inevitable that at some point we're going to have something similar. Like it could be years away, but that's kind of where we come in and trying to help people, prepare for that, so it's not a huge shock when things come into law. So in the EU at the moment, the way that they are looking to crack down on claims is just, I guess, making sure that companies really substantiate what they're trying to, the claims they're making. And there's some pretty big penalties that are being proposed as well, which is important to be aware of. So they're talking about 4% of companies' annual turnover as a potential penalty if they breach the regulations. So I guess it's really about providing that context and providing evidence to support the claims that you're making, and making sure that they're not irrelevant or misleading in any way. So a good example of that is you might have seen claims around, no CFCs, for instance. This product contains no CFCs. CFCs have been banned in most countries for a very long time, so it's a given, and claiming that it's, more than that is really misleading. Claims around recycled content. This product contains recycled content. It's a question of, how much recycled content is in this product. Is that the primary, most relevant issue for the product? Those sorts of things. And carbon claims as well is going to be a big one. So making sure that those are substantiated. They're third-party independently verified is what's being proposed as well. So you can't just go and make your own carbon claims. You've got to be really clear about the methodology that you've used and things like that. So, and part of the reason that they've decided to do this is because of the stats on the screen at the moment. So they basically did an investigation into greenwashing in EU countries, and they found that 53% of the claims that were being made were really vague, which is alarming. And 40% of them had no supporting evidence whatsoever. So I guess there are various ways to, as a business, to combat that. So backing them up, obviously, with some really clear evidence that might be on your website. Better still, if you can get it on your product in some way, shape, or form. But I guess that's where the likes of EcoChoice, Aotearoa come in as well. So you've passed muster, you've got the badge, you've been verified by a independent third party.
And And Laura, just to expound a little bit on greenwashing, just for those of us who maybe it's a newer term and we don't quite get like exactly like I think we, it's a broad stroke term. So like what are we finding what certain, I guess, more examples about greenwashing and how that's showing up for us throughout the world, not just in Aotearoa?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's an example that I find really horrific that is pretty recent. So in the US, they had some period-proof underwear that is, freely available now, which, you think, great, that is got to be much better for the environment than the alternative, right? But some people did some testing on the absorbent layer that was in it, and it was full of the likes of reproductive toxins. So obviously horrendous in terms of being in contact with women's bodies and those sorts of things. So that's quite an extreme case, and probably due to people just not doing their due diligence to a certain extent. So that's like an extreme end. It can be using words like eco-friendly. Ocean plastic is one that kills me.
Oh, tell me more about that. Ocean plastic. So where is that being used and how?
Yeah, so there's now there's actually an official label that you can get for ocean plastic now, and if you read the fine print, it's any sort of plastic that is found within a sort of 50-kilometer radius of the shoreline. So it's not necessarily in the ocean. And I guess the issue that I have with it is that it's quite emotive. Ocean plastic, you start worrying about dolphins and turtles getting caught up and things like that. What's the difference between ocean plastic and then, being on land? I think recycled plastic is enough, and being clear about, the percentage and things like that as well. So being overly emotive, exaggerating your claims, those sorts of things, I think are real red flags when it comes to greenwashing, along with things that are just absolutely not true. But again, it's very rare, I think, that we see people making claims that have just got no basis whatsoever. It's just kind of, I don't know, that maybe not giving the full story is usually what we're seeing.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Anyway, so that's what's happening in the EU. As I mentioned, really important if you have export aspirations, but these sorts of legislations are probably going to be a lot more widespread in the coming years. Generally, what we see, especially around environmental innovations or regulation policies, that sort of thing, is they'll start in the northern hemisphere and slowly work their way down into the southern hemisphere. So it's good to be really aware of what is happening in, I suppose, maybe more forward-thinking places that are under more pressure than New Zealand in terms of trying to stamp this sort of thing out. And so, I mean, in New Zealand, we have the Kantar Better Futures report, which comes out every year, which really looks at consumer insights, which if you haven't seen, I would absolutely recommend having a look at, because I think it really helps state the case for moving your business to more environmentally preferable practices, also socially preferable, which we'll talk about too. We know that, so 53% of people are looking for claims and labels at the moment, but they are very confused. I sort of liken myself to this, when I was, had a new baby. I mean, not much has changed really. I'm still usually flustered when I end up in a supermarket aisle, but new baby, I'm trying to, wander through the supermarket. I'm trying to make good choices, right? But I don't have time to stop and, get my phone out, double check things. So if I see like a tree logo or something like that, I remember I was like, okay, yeah, that seems like it would be a good choice. So I have absolutely fallen for this stuff in the past as well. And I guess it grates me because we know that people are really actively trying to make good choices. And when they find out that they've been duped, it's no good for anyone. Like, we don't want anyone to give up trying to make good choices. It's also a really bad look for your brand as well, and trying to build up when someone feels duped and trying to sort of win them back. I mean, it's an uphill battle, right? But I think what's really interesting here is that, every year we're getting closer to people willing to make more, pay more money for sustainable products. which is fantastic. I think it actually fell this year a little bit just because, you know, we're in a cost of living crisis. So people are not always in a position to be able to do that. But I think there is a huge myth, and something that we are really keen to spread the message around, is that, you know, sustainable products aren't necessarily more expensive. There seems that there's this huge myth around that. You know, I think it's annoying when people charge an absolute premium when they don't need to on goods that are more sustainable. But there's a lot of things that are you know, reusable or refillable and things like that. So in the long run, you save a lot more money. There's lots of different things there. So yeah, we're very keen to sort of try and bust that myth, as it were. So yeah, that's a little bit of, again, I would really encourage anyone to have a look at that. It's on the Kantar website. You can download it, have a look there, and keep your finger on the pulse of what consumers are wanting. And again, if you do have export aspirations, look up the EU directive on green claims, and just, yeah, keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening over there. It's a good way to future-proof your business by paying attention.
Yeah, and we've got a really great question here from Bex. Bex is asking or saying, there appears to be a lot more emphasis on the way in which a product is manufactured in terms of being eco-positive, but not enough emphasis on the sustainability of a product, how long it will last, can it be repurposed before being recycled? Would you agree?
Oh, Bex, yes, I agree. Thank you for this question. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And just to give you, like, I can use obviously EcoChoice as an example. So I think I mentioned that we take a life cycle approach. And what that means is that we look at, like, if we're looking at a product, for instance, we will look at the very beginning, you know, from the raw extraction of materials that are used to be made. So if there's mining or there's textiles involved, that sort of thing. We look at the entire manufacture process, how the product is distributed, and importantly, the product stewardship at the end. So can it be repurposed? Is it durable in the first instance? Those sorts of things. And, you know, is there a product, you know, stewardship scheme in place? So a really great example of this is, so keep in mind, we've been around for 30 years. So this is kind of a longer term example, but it's exactly how an eco label should work and should raise the bar. So we have worked with Resene, the paint guys, since day dot. And, you know, when we started working with them, you know, they've been amazing in terms of being market leaders. Like, you know, with our standards, we look to raise the bar every couple of years or when innovations occur, and they've continually sort of met the standards over that period of time. But, you know, we got to a point where we're like, okay, what more can you do? And we started talking about product stewardship. So they started a take back scheme, and, you know, people could bring their paint back instead of just chucking it in landfill. And so that was amazing. You know, they were repurposing it, giving it to community groups, that sort of thing. And then they widened it. So they take anyone's paint back, including their competitors, which is absolutely brilliant. And the sort of, I like to call it radical collaboration that we need at the moment. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And look, we're doing some work around repairability as well at the moment. We've got a discussion paper that we're about to launch around what a repairability label could look like in New Zealand. There's obviously the French have an example of that, and they've kind of used almost a little bit like the Energy Star system. So you get a rating out of, I think it might be 10. And, you know, it'll look at different elements, like, is it able to be disassembled quite easily? You know, are you know, spare parts freely available? Those sorts of things. Is there, you know, a designated area that you can take things back to be repaired? Because, you know, again, so many, especially with appliances, but also with apparel and things like that as well. You know, things just get thrown in landfill, and we've really got to figure out a way of repurposing things, reusing them, repairing them, all of that sort of thing. It's so funny. Like, I think we were all brought up, anyone in sort of my age bracket, I guess, thinking that, you know, recycling was the gold standard. And you know, absolutely, like, recycling is great, don't get me wrong, but there are like so many other steps before that that would be preferable. So yeah, I think awareness is growing. But yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, great question, Bex. And also I was thinking about, there are a lot of apparel companies that I've noticed that are doing repair programs, you know, anything that just send it back to them. They'll fix anything that's ripped or patch it up for you so that it doesn't end up in landfill, or they'll repurpose the materials. So there are a few companies here in Aotearoa that I've noticed that are doing that as well, which is beautiful. And really exciting. I come from an immigrant background, so we reused everything. Like my family was reusing everything. You didn't throw anything away. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember my mother was the same. My friends used to make fun of me because they'd come around and we'd have everything in our fridge or in our cupboards. She used to reuse like your margarine or butter containers. So it just looked like we had an entire fridge full of butter, but there were sort of all sorts of bits and pieces, stashed away. But she reused the containers. So yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a story. I don't even know if I want to share it. I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it. So my Greek grandmother, already like not animal friendly, the glue traps for mice. So we were in Greece one summer, and a mouse got trapped in a glue trap, and she humanely, put it out of its misery, but then pulled it off the glue trap to reuse the glue trap. So that's like how intensely we're talking about.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good on grandma.
So that's just a little example for all of you, but yeah.
Great. Well, I don't know if there's any more questions on green claims, but we can move on if
not at the moment. Yep.
Perfect. Well, look, I think one of the other big things to talk about at the moment is obviously the modern slavery legislation that has been newly announced. So I guess one of the things that occurred to us to begin with is, and I'm usually very frank and straightforward, but I feel like it is really disappointing that, where it only targets businesses that are earning, or revenue is over $20 million a year, because I think, no one should profit off the misery of others to begin with. But also I think, and again, this is not intentional, I don't think half the time, but I think when you are a small to medium business as well, and you may not have a huge sustainability team or supply chain experts and things like that, it's harder for smaller businesses to sort of get that overview of what their supply chain looks like, where there might be risks, those sorts of things. And it's also hard to have I think in the past people have argued that it's hard for small entities to have influence, but I think in New Zealand, 98% of businesses are SMEs, and together you've got a heck of a lot of sway. So we have actually started phasing in modern slavery and social accountability criteria into some of our standards, and we did that earlier this year. So some of our new standards. So we're trying to do it as quickly as possible, but it also depends on our capacity to do so, and we want to consult with industry and other stakeholders as we do it as well, to understand where there might be obstacles and that sort of thing. So but look, I think one of the things to keep in mind, if you are a small to medium business and you're supplying to some of these big enterprises, is your supply chain is going to come under scrutiny as well. Well, it should do, because you're part of the supply chain, right? So if it's anything from, if you're supplying cleaning fluids to toilet paper, who knows, they're going to have to be, checks and balances in place that whatever they're purchasing from you, if you're a sort of B2B focus, is lining up. And I think the other thing I think is a kind of a misconception is that modern slavery is often thought to be something that happens overseas. It's not always the case. We have a horrific problem with modern slavery domestically, and I think we've all seen demonstration of that in the last sort of couple of weeks with these migrants who have been exploited. And those are not new cases. Obviously, their visas were expedited because of Cyclone Gabrielle. We needed more resource to be able to fix things and so on. But when we talk about modern slavery at EcoChoice Aotearoa and our new criteria, it's around the definition for modern slavery is, forced labor. It can be, people working without breaks, all those sorts of things. But we've also got social accountability criteria. So it's looking at, are you could it be reasonably expected for you to be paying people a living wage and things like that as well? And I guess, part of the reason that we've had our rebrand, and I know it doesn't seem like a huge leap, but we've shortened to Eco Choice because we really wanted to be reflective of the entire ecosystem, which includes humans and how we treat each other as well. Also, just from I suppose a purely business point of view, we were already informally making those checks. As you can imagine, it would be pretty awful if we certified a product as being environmentally preferable and it emerged that 8-year-olds were assembling it overseas. Like that's not ideal. We couldn't in good conscience do that as well. So so I just think it's definitely something that everyone needs to pay attention to around the modern slavery legislation and the implications. But I also think it's a really great opportunity for businesses, small to medium businesses, to sort of show they're doing the mahi, even though that they're not obligated to. So there's a couple of things I just thought I'd share that might be worth thinking about. So if we flick to the next slide. So these are really straightforward. Like you don't have to overthink them. And there is so much literature available online. And honestly, we're happy to help as well if you ever want to get in contact with us. So the first thing is around creating like a modern slavery statement, which kind of outlines your stance on that, and what you were doing to try and prevent it, that sort of thing. Look at doing a risk assessment. So if you're importing components of a product or your product from overseas, is it from a country that is, really prone to modern slavery, and some are more than others? Where are they located? What sort of eyes do you have on the working conditions and those sorts of things? Third one is around, making your suppliers aware that this is like not okay as well. Like that this is, your stance is X, Y, Z, and a condition of doing business with them is that they agree with that and they honor it. There are a couple of ways that you can sort of, and I know it's kind of daunting when you're based in New Zealand and you have an offshore supplier. It's not like it's not feasible to fly over there and have a look around yourself and check everything's in place. But there's a couple of different I suppose internationally recognized certifications that should help, and they like real baseline that they should have in place. So we go to the next slide. Because my mind is not great at spouting numbers and things like that. Obviously, if we have lots of people that are suppliers and they will provide components to other businesses, so you can be assured if it's got an Eco Choice Aotearoa label on it, you are good. We're part of something called the Global Eco Labeling Network, so there's a bunch of other, I guess, top tier eco labels that you can trust. So you might have heard of the likes of Nordic Swan, EU Eco Label, Blue Angel. We have a bunch throughout Asia as well. But some of these real basic ones is around like ISO, so International Standards Organization. The 14001 is like base for environmental management. Like everyone should have that if they're worth their salt. So asking for the paperwork for that, making sure it's up to date, because they might just send you something that was from 1982. So you want to make sure that it's up to date, it's relevant, and they should be getting audited every couple of years. Also ISO 45001, so it's making sure that workers aren't exposed to dangerous conditions. Absolutely, they should have something like that if they're like a proper player and supplying to people around the place. They should have that in place. And I think most people in New Zealand would have, or businesses that are manufacturing items would have this ISO standard or something similar in place. It's just really good to recognize that not everyone has the same sort of health and safety legislation as we do in New Zealand. So some of this is really over and above, but part and parcel if you're supplying to other countries. And the last one is ISO 26000, which is all around social responsibility. This one is probably not as common as the other two, but it's becoming increasingly common because lots of people are, really, I suppose, social issues and modern slavery. There's more awareness and things like that, and different countries are requiring these sorts of things for trade, which again is something we talked about with the green claims, and backing up your products with this sort of material. So you should be able to ask any supplier for this to send it through to you. Again, those first two, 14,001 and 45,001, are really base level. If they don't have that, it's a major red flag. So something you can check for, just to put your mind at ease as well, because I don't think anyone intentionally wants to be contributing to modern slavery around the world. So
yeah, and I think you can screenshot this if you want, anyone who's watching, just so that you have a copy of this on hand.
Yeah, sorry, these slides are a little bit wordy, but I thought it might be good on that front that if you want to refer to them later. Awesome. Has anyone got any more questions around modern slavery? No? Okay, we can move on then. Trying to remember what else I was going to talk about. Responsible workplace. So this, before we get to this one, I'll talk a little bit more about that, the ethical procurement, often called sustainable procurement. So this is something which is huge overseas and hasn't really landed in New Zealand yet. You might have heard before, I was sort of referring to things starting in the Northern Hemisphere and then finally coming down to the Southern Hemisphere. This is probably one of them. So sustainable procurement, green procurement, ethical procurement, they're all kind of the same sort of thing. It's really interesting. So there's a push for sustainable public procurement, or SPP. People love an acronym, don't they? But that is mostly around governments in particular using their buying power. So I think, the states, and, not the poster child for environmental, progression, but they do a tremendous job in terms of utilizing their government's buying power to make sure that the products that they use, which are so wide-ranging, so anything from paint, carpet, to cleaning products, to I don't know, they have categories for it, and they look at all the eco labels around the world, and if you pass muster, you end up on their register, which we are. But the reason that they have this in place, one of the great things is, first of all, I guess the government should be leading the charge, right, when it comes to buying better and being responsible. And procurement just isn't about getting the cheapest thing, because we know the pitfalls of that. It generally means that someone's, not being paid correctly, or it's been, made subpar, those sorts of things. But the idea is that it also really facilitates green innovation. So if someone comes up with a really great idea, and it's a real breakthrough, it's it's environmentally preferable, is that they are they're in a position that their product could be picked over, say, some huge behemoth of a company, because they're preferable, and then it helps them scale. So it's about sort of creating a greener marketplace and helping those innovators scale, where often you might have someone with a terrific idea, but they sort of stay small, and because they don't have the ability to scale, they don't have that demand. And look, I often talk about, they're not certified with us. I'm just an absolute fangirl, but there's a brilliant company down in Wellington called Solid. They do toothpaste, and they do it in glass jars, and you can return the glass jars, and they refill them, and it's just amazing. Like, the number of toothpaste tubes that end up in landfill every year like, I fell off my chair when I sort of heard them talking about it. But something like that, versus you imagine those guys trying to take on the Colgates of this world, and something like sustainable procurement, like if that's available in hospitals or something like that, could really make a difference. So if you had told me 18 months ago, when I sort of started this job, that I would get very passionate about procurement, I would have laughed at you, but here we are. So I guess the reason that this is kind of worthwhile talking about with SMEs is, great if you are product based and you're looking to create something that is environmentally preferable, but you guys also have a huge amount of buying power, is what I would say. And this is like what is leading me to talk about Responsible Workplace, which is a new certification of ours that we're just about to launch. So we have our products and services, but we have heard time and time again, we've had businesses say it's an accountancy firm or a law firm, or maybe it's a telco or a bank or a real estate agency or something like that. And they're saying, oh, we're planting some trees, but it doesn't really seem like there's anything else we can do. We don't, it's not like we're making stuff or whatever. But there's actually a bunch of stuff that service-based businesses can do, and sustainable procurement is one of them for sure. And if you can imagine like a big corporate who, enacted a sustainable procurement policy, that would be game-changing for New Zealand businesses that are trying to do the right thing. So this is kind of why we have created this new specification, because sustainable procurement in particular, or ethical procurement, whatever you want to call it, is it's this really high impact, relatively low cost thing that you can do to make a real difference. So this new specification that we have created, if we click through, these are the sort of things that we take into account. So we're looking at modern slavery. So are you, paying your people well? You're not exposing them to unfair conditions, those sorts of things. And that extends to, social accountability. Do you have sort of diversity and inclusion policies? Your waste, super easy things to do. Just like think about, how you can limit your waste that's going to landfill. So is it, having, different bins? So you've got your recyclables, your things that, will inevitably end up in landfill, but organic. So you can limit that amount of the waste that you're generating. Looking at your fleet, and travel. And look, we don't expect everyone to sort of, go out and buy a bunch of EVs. Like we're aware of what's commercially viable. But if it gets to a point where you're on a lease or something like that, definitely look at, investigating whether an EV or a hybrid might be a good addition to your company. And look at different ways to travel as well. Like in New Zealand, we don't really, like, our public transport isn't fantastic, let's be honest. But if you can find ways to limit air travel and stuff like that, that's, and only travel when you need to, that's really great as well. The standard will take into account emissions, and we'll give you guidance on how you measure that, because I know that can be really daunting when you're an SME as well. And the Ministry for the Environment has like a really basic Excel sheet that you can refer to as well, which is quite handy, a little bit archaic, but does the job. Energy usage and how you maintain your equipment as well. So, say you've got a computer, are you able to repair it, or are you just like chucking it out? What do you do with it? What do you do with your e-waste as well? Those sorts of things. And then the final thing that we have, which is quite a big component of the standard, is around sustainable procurement. So we have a list of products that, if you are needing them for your office, that are EcoChoice certified, that we highly recommend. So, and that covers everything from, again, cleaning products, toilet paper, ordinary paper, your heating and ventilation systems, which you may or may not have control over, because most businesses are tenants rather than owning their own businesses. But anything for refitting, paint, carpet, all of those sorts of things. We don't, while we have furniture companies on board, and we love you to consider them as well. There's, we obviously are also really in favour of looking to buy secondhand, and our EcoChoice office is a good example of this. My old couch, someone else's old coffee table, those sorts of things that we've bought in. So we're really in favour of you finding other ways to upcycle and keep things a bit more circular. So sustainable procurement is something that we really would love for Aotearoa to get more on board with, because it's about also supporting generally other New Zealand businesses as well, that are doing the right thing. So anything on any of these? Oh, this is our pretty, if we go back to sorry, go ahead, next slide, thank you. To the slide fairy. This is sort of, when you sign up for Responsible Workplace, and if you get the big tick of approval, there's different ways to advertise that as well. So it's definitely, there's a clear line. We're not endorsing a product. It's just the workplace. Yeah, and that will be clearly sort of articulated there. So yeah, we're really excited about this one because we think it's like really pragmatic and tangible steps people can make. And the interesting thing is, as well, is it's kind of about setting the bar in the first year as well, sort of like going, okay, where are we at? And it's not like slapping anyone, on the hand and saying, you are doing a terrible job. It's like getting that baseline in order when you're not expected to be perfect, and setting goals with your auditor. So like, in 2 years' time, this is where we want to be. We want to, halved our waste to landfill. We would have liked to have transitioned to, plug-in hybrids or something like that. It's about setting these, and constantly improving the way you do things. So I'm excited in that front because I do acknowledge that, the rest of our standards can be a bit like, oh, you didn't make it, close the door in your face type thing. Come back when you're ticking every single box. But this one is just about trying to get people on board and move them along and start making better choices and doing their bit. And I think it could be it could make a huge difference. So we're looking forward to publishing this very soon. Keep your eyes open for it.
Yeah, Laura, will you tell us a little bit about the different certification? Because this is a new certification program you will be launching, and you do have the certification program for the products. And what I'm gleaning from this talk, which is incredible, so much beautiful information. And what I'm seeing is those of us who are producing things and who are just consumers, we need it easy. We want the transparency. We want you to say, okay, so if there's an eco-choice label on something, I know that's been vetted. Where, like you said, I don't have time to get on my phone and, figure out if these people are greenwashing or hyperbolizing, their eco-friendliness, right? Which I think it's interesting that you stopped using eco-friendly so talk to me about the certifications or anything else that you want to, but we still have a little time. And I'm really into it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I hope I haven't completely overwhelmed everyone. I do get overly excited about this stuff. Yeah, I mean, just going back to the eco-friendly thing, I think, again, some of the products that we certify, we couldn't do without. If we're looking, especially in the building industry, we need things that are going to, be durable for the safety of people. So we can't just, go, you guys are evildoers. How can you sleep at night? It's going, okay, well, how do we work with you and put parameters around here to make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can? So for us to come out and say, I don't know, some of these different building products, or, for instance, I'm picking on the building industry, are, environmentally friendly, would be really misleading on our part. And it's tough because that's the kind of wording that consumers are looking for, right? Like, who Googles environmentally preferable? Like, honestly, if someone's got a better terminology, I'm here for it. Yeah, we're trying to, really stick to our guns and not contribute to the confusion and the greenwashing that does exist. In terms of our certifications, so I guess if you're going to break it up into parts of the things that we look at, whether you're a product or service, responsible workplace is quite separate, and I can talk a bit more about that in a second. But with our products and services, so we obviously look at the environmental preferability of the product, but we also look at whether something is safe for you and your family. So the example I talked about before with the period-proof underwear, if that had come through us, we would have looked at that, that layer that they're using, the absorbency layer. We would have been like, heck no, you cannot use this stuff. It's dangerous. And it would have been, it wouldn't have got the tick of approval, as it were. And I think in that instance as well, like, I think it was genuinely a company that was trying to do the right thing. And they were like, this is great. You just wash them, you're good. And I think they got a hell of a shock when they found out what was actually in there. So that's what we can, that we can help you with. And it's the same with modern slavery as well. It's, like, people don't expect that there are people who are, you have a business and maybe you're getting product components or products made overseas and bought in. You don't expect that, there's underage people making those, or they're forced to work, every day for the next 3 months. Those sorts of things are, there are people who will be genuinely really shocked about it. And that's when we find that stuff, it's not about slapping you around and saying, you terrible human, how could you let this happen? It's like, okay, this is an issue. Let's work together to figure out how we solve it. And, it's not like we go out, and tell everyone, about what we've found. It's all confidential. And the idea is that we work together to solve these sorts of problems. And I think, honestly, when we have businesses that come to us to apply, it's generally inevitable that they're going to have to tweak things in order to get there. So it might be looking, say it's some sort of cleaning fluid, we'll look at you might have to change the formulation, because goodness knows our waterways are in a heck of a state in New Zealand, and we need to make sure that you're not unnecessarily contributing to that. Or, it might be, hey, there's, some, looking like there's some modern slavery in your supply chain here. Do you need to look for another supplier to give you the same product? Those sorts of things. So,
and I think it's a good point for us to really drive home this sense of feeling shamed by being called out, and no one's calling you out. We're all just everyone's learning, and everything's evolving as we're going. And so, like you said about modern slavery, I wouldn't, in my head, I think about, not modern slavery. And what does that mean? No one's using that. No one's doing that, and so actually, like, saying, no, this is the definition of that. This is how it manifests now. And no one's shaming you about it, because we're all just learning. So, I think just to drive that little point home.
Absolutely. There's the environmental preferability, whether it's safe for you and your family. And then we do have a fit for purpose clause as well in our standards. So it's giving consumers, the assurance that whatever it is that they're using actually works. So, it might be like, this is an environmentally preferable cleaning fluid and it's just water, but we're like, no, we make sure that it's, there's proof that it actually works, whether that's through consumer feedback or looking at the formulation, and, our environmental scientists looking at that as well. And that's one thing that it's kind of a different tangent, I guess, but something that I think is really important is you often see like environmentally preferable products being compared with your stock standard products, right? And sometimes there is, you've got to sort of, there's a trade-off, like if something is absolutely full of chemicals, for instance, and I'll keep using cleaning products, if something is absolutely full of chemicals that it like annihilates any sort of grease or grime on your dishes, of course that is going to score higher than something that is made with ingredients that are preferable, right? So comparing them together is like comparing apples and oranges. And I think that's something that we tend to do in this country. And it's just good to point out the difference. Like, it's never going to be the same, right? But I don't know about you, but I can live with, picking off a bit of stuff off my plate if it hasn't totally cleaned in the dishwasher or what have you. So it's all about trade-offs. So that's kind of like what we try and say are the three main components of certification is the environmental preferable, whether it's safe, and not just for you and your family, but the people who are manufacturing it as well is really important. And then whether it's fit for purpose. So, and it's the same principle that goes with the service standard as well. And then, so those are sort of the main parts with there. You can jump on our website. You can look at the standards. My apologies, because it still looks a little bit ancient. We're working on it, but all the information is there, and you can, click on a category. If we don't represent a category that you're in, we're always keen to hear. We are constantly creating new categories when there's some sort of demand for there to be something in place. We work really closely with our pals across the Tasman in Australia, Good Environmental Choice Australia, otherwise known as GECA, and we try to share resources a little bit, and are going to be working together a lot more. And that's something else I should mention as well, because we have this global network. If you are a business that does have export aspirations or is in the thick of it, is we can sort of fast track you getting labels in other territories as well. So that's something to keep in mind, I guess. You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've just popped your website into the chat. Anyone who's in here can can pop that open and have a look at the website. Bex has another good question. Do you partner with companies who can help other SMEs achieve their goals / requirements in this space?
It's a good question. Bex, can you give me a kind of an example? Sorry, I'm trying to get my head around that one. I guess there's a lag having to type.
Yeah, I'll give her a moment to type. You partner with companies who can help other SMEs achieve their goals and requirements in this space. We'll wait and see if X comes back. Here we go. Services, etc., that can help meet sustainability goals.
Gotcha. Okay. We've probably done it on a bit of an ad hoc basis, but it's probably not where we sit generally. So you may have heard there's some really terrific groups around, and I think specifically for the SME community, the Sustainable Business Network is a really good organization to be aware of if you're not already. So they are just a really helpful bunch of people. And they've been around for about the same time as we have as well. So they've got some terrific expertise. But they basically will bring businesses together, and they're great at joining the dots. They have lots of different networking events, but also trainings as well. So next week, I'm actually participating in a masterclass around communicating sustainability. So green claims and things like that as well. They often have those sorts of things for their members. But they're really good at, say, if you're a business and you're like, oh, I just cannot figure out what other alternative packaging I can use that isn't damaging to the environment, linking you up with those sorts of things. But look, anyone, if there's anything we can ever do to help, we're always our doors open, and we sort of have a pretty good idea of the landscape. So we're always happy to make introductions and things like that as well. And I think the people who are in this sort of, not sector, but businesses that are sustainably minded as well, I think one of the really cool things that we've noticed is that they are really keen to help. And even, like, as I was talking before about radical collaboration, it's super interesting, like how they all come together, and and they will be happy to share intel and things like that as well. So yeah, I think if you were looking for some help or some guidance from a bigger company, I think starting with if you're a member of the Sustainable Business Network, check them out. Sustainable Business Network, I don't think it's too expensive to join. But if you've got a particular problem, feel free to give us a call at EcoChoice as well, and we can brainstorm with you. We're like, it sounds really naff, but we're here to help. We're a not-for-profit, and we want to move the dial and increase the pace at our climate mitigation and put a stop to the environmental degradation we're seeing. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question, Bex, but I tried.
Yeah, I'll see if any other questions come through, but do you have anything else that you want to share with us about any of the other, about the certification that's about to be launched?
Sure. So yeah, that should be in the next sort of fortnight. And if you were interested in having a bit more of a chat about that or getting a copy of it, please feel free to reach out. My email is just laura@ecochoice.org.nz. It's a lot easier to remember than environmentalchoice.org.nz.
Which is what I put into the chat, but that's all right. And then
it's fine. It should
pop to the other one.
To go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're really excited about that, and we would love to have sort of some members, I guess, with us from the beginning to help us, push that forward and make it. We'd love for it to become business as usual, and then the standard or certification be completely irrelevant because everyone is really monitoring their waste and things like that as well. Like I know it sounds probably really counterintuitive, but the day that we don't have to exist is going to be a bloody good one. So yeah. yeah, you jump on there, have a look. Always keen to chat about things. Maybe you don't need a certification, but you just want a blueprint about how to do things better. That's the whole point of us having our standards online, so you can download them and check them out. But yeah, if you want to be recognised for them, have a yarn with us. We've got a fancy new website coming, which will also give you the ability to upload your latest news and tell people through our networks what you're up to and talk about your sustainability credentials and those sorts of things. So yeah, and if you think there's a product category we're missing, very keen to help. We've also got a newsletter on our website that you can sign up for as well. One of the things that we are really keen on is, I mentioned before that all of our standards go out to public consultation, and the more feedback we can get on those, the stronger the standards are, because we obviously try our best to get it right by looking at what's being done around the rest of the world, engaging with core stakeholders to begin with to understand, what are the market realities as well, because we've got to keep that in mind, right? And then we put it out to public consultation. But if you'd like to join the list to be able to get your eyes on standards before we publish them and give us your thoughts, we would love that. Some might be relevant, some might be like, I have no, you might have no idea about steel, for instance. That's totally fine. But maybe, when we put our new textiles one out, you might have something to say about that. And we love feedback. We genuinely love feedback. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Laura. Thanks again for taking your time to come on here and share your expertise with us, sharing your passion for this. I love to see businesses that are also really passionate about what we're offering. Non-for-profit, it's fantastic. So I would love to see you come back on. I don't know if we can find another way to get you and or Stella in here. So anyone who's been watching, if there's more you want to know, obviously you can reach out to Laura at EcoChoice Aotearoa. You can also check in with us at support@digitalboost.co.nz. Any questions that weren't answered? Oh, wait, we've got one quick question before we go. Belinda, I see you. How would you compare yourself to a B Corp? Good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I probably should have maybe done a landscaping at the start. So we love B Corp. If you have our certification, you will get additional points. So they obviously have a point system. The way we would compare is, first of all, that we have generally, aside from responsible workplace, we have a focus on individual products and services. So we don't look at like the organization. We look at is this particular product safe? Is it environmentally preferable? Because you could be an organization that has hundreds of products. Some of them might be environmentally preferable, some of them might not be. So we just look at certifying the ones that we have really examined closely. And I would say that our environmental criteria, obviously, we're very science-based, and yeah, looking at things like safety, environment, those sorts of things are a big part of what we do as well. We also, I guess, when we are creating our standards, we do so through a very, I suppose, an Aotearoa lens. We look at, what we create them for New Zealand businesses, and we take into consideration some of the market realities for New Zealand businesses as well. Obviously, we're a small island at the end of the world, and we don't have, some of the options that other countries have. So, for instance, when you're creating wool products in New Zealand, you often have to, potentially send them overseas to get scoured and then bring them back again, and that's just, unfortunately, we don't have wool scouring facilities in New Zealand, and it's not ideal, but we have a ton of sheep and we've got to do something with that wool, right?
We do. Yeah.
But there's those sorts of things that, when we're putting our standards together, that we consider. So, and again, if any time someone is, looking to apply and they see something that is either, the market's moved on and things like that, we're always happy to hear that. Please argue with us. We genuinely love that sort of thing. So those are sort of the main differences. We've traditionally been very product and service based rather than the whole organization. With responsible workplace as well, that's just looking at how the operation works. So again, your waste and your sustainable procurement, we don't look at, the governance structure or any of that sort of thing. But with the social component there as well, issues that are very current in New Zealand as well. So around diversity and inclusion, hopefully at some point we're looking for partners. If you know of anyone, it would be brilliant to hear from them. But I would really like to see treaty commitments in our social criteria. The next round that we look to do, because we update our standards as regularly as we can, but we are very conscious that we need to do that in partnership to get it right. But it's definitely something that's on our radar. So I guess everything is very much through that New Zealand lens, products and services. And I guess we offer a level of assurance that no one else does. I think, we do on-site audits far more regularly than anyone else. And yeah, there's that big tick around, environmental preferable, whether it's environmentally preferable and whether it's safe, and whether it's the product is going to do what it says it's supposed to do. So yeah, I think that level of assurance is pretty unheard of, to be honest. But we are massive fans of B Corp. I think they've done a great job, and it's tremendous to see so many people getting, being a part of that movement. So yeah, it's not a competitive space. We all play nicely together, and we all, our eco label isn't perfect for everyone, and there might be, might be more suitable for others. The same with carbon claims as well. Carbon might be the biggest issue that is, relevant to your business. So you might be better off to speak to someone else than us. Carbon is some of what we do, but it's not exclusively. But you might not need to jump through all the other, or might not want to jump through all the other hoops that we have as well. We're not that popular sometimes because, we're hard work,
Yeah.
to get you really have to earn our eco label, and you can't buy it. I guess it's something that I'm really proud of, that you can't buy it, and you either tick all the boxes or you have to go back to the drawing board. So yeah, we're really proud of the eco label. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks so much. Honestly, I love the passion.
Now I'm really worried that I've been like over the top. Like
no. I'm American. I'm over the top. You're nothing compared to.
Okay, good. Yeah. Just one other thing I'd say though is that it's really exciting, the SME community in New Zealand, because I feel like there is so many innovators and so much cool stuff going on. So yeah, we always just want to know what's happening, and so again, even if you're not after, looking to get certified or something like that, we love to hear about innovation and just cool stuff that's happening. And if there's any way we can support you, we'd love to, because yeah, I think there's so many really incredible businesses around the traps. And if there's anything we can do to help, scale you, that's what we're here for.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for all your great questions. Again, some of you are going to be coming in and watching the recording, so you can reach out to Laura, you can reach out to us here at Digital Boost, and we can help get you. I was going to say, we have another question. Now it's just, thanks so much. Yeah. Thanks so much. A lot of great feedback here. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you again for our next Q&A on Tuesday. Tune in. I'll be there. Matewa.